Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Let's Talk Fortitude. And I am honored to have a returning guest. And I told him I was going to make him a regular contributor if we can work out our schedules. Brian, thanks for coming back, buddy.
Hey, John, what's going on? How you doing?
Hey, listen, I'm great. I'm gonna read a little something here before we get started because I've asked Brian to come back on but I want to just read something here out of the book that we're going to be talking about. Brian's built and managed sales territories from $2 to $25 million in annual revenue and is recognized as a people-first leader. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. Brian is the husband of 24 years with his wife. Now, some of this information may change a bit because I'm not sure how long this book's been in print. So we'll correct anything that needs to be corrected. Anyway, 24 years to his wife, Tanya, and is the father of a son, Bryce. Is Bryce still a student there at Marshall University?
He's in his last year at Marshall. So
He's a student there at Marshall University. Brian is a minister, singer, musician, and the host of the Intentional Encourager podcast. And I owe you an apology because in the last one I said on the banner was run across, it said intentional encouragement. I watched it the other day and I was like, oh man. Anyway, it's podcast. He had a podcast that was releasing twice weekly, but he's kind of put that on hiatus for now, but it's the Intentional Encourager podcast. And I encourage everyone to go and listen to the recordings that are on there now. They're awesome. Brian also is a part-time guest host on broadcaster for iHeartRadio Media in Huntington, where he does sets in for Tom Roten. And that's awesome. And the voice of the Calvary Baptist Academy Patriots boys basketball program in Hurricane, West Virginia. Brian, I'm honored to have you back on. His book, actually, what you're seeing, I don't know, that's probably around backwards because I don't have the mirror set up on my phone. But that's the background. His book cover is the background that he's got behind him today. Brian, this book on the front page, 10 powerful people lessons from the ultimate people person, my dad.
Yep.
And this is I do have this banner correct, I hope. So Brian is the author of the People Buy From People book. It's a tribute to Brian's father, Pastor Jerry Sexton. And Pastor Jerry was also a great, phenomenal salesman. Am I correct?
Yeah. He spent about 40 years in sales, John. And I got the title People Buy From People. My dad, when I got my first sales job in July of 1995, right before I turned 23 years old, my dad looked at me one day. He said, son, never forget, people buy from people. And I didn't forget. And so when my dad passed away in 2012, it was something I'd always kind of had in the back of my mind. And in 2020, I had kind of worked on it off and on. And I said, if I'm going to do this book's getting finished this year in 2020. And then lo and behold, we have a global pandemic and people got lots of time on their hands. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to finish this. And John, here's something I haven't shared a whole lot about the book. Is that I intentionally delayed the release of the book to December 6th. So the book released December 6th, 2020. That date is significant because it's the anniversary of my dad's death. And I wanted to take typically a sad day for my family turned into a celebration.
Awesome.
So I held it back, but it officially released. And we released it in 2020. It's still out there a little bit. I mean, again, I don't talk about it as much as I used to. I don't talk about it as much as I did, right after it released. But it will always be something I'll be proud of. It'll always be something near and dear to my heart. I have the first copy out of the when I got it sent from the publisher. I've got the first copy, and I signed it and inscribed it to myself as a reminder of this is what we accomplished. And I wanted to take the first one and I wanted to go put it down at my dad's grave. Wanted to kind of put it in something, maybe laminate it, and my wife said something to me. She's like, it'll get tore up. It'll get destroyed, and I said, yeah, you're probably right. So I have the first copy. I intentionally took it out of the box in the desk. Just literally, I'm staring at the desk I took it out of. And I was like, I'm getting the first copy. My wife's got copy 2. And I think at one time I numbered them, but then I stopped. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to number. This is this is number 275. No, I'm not doing that. So, but if you're an author and you do, hey, more power to you.
Right. I'm going to get you to sign mine one way or another.
Yeah,
we're going to hook up.
We'll get that taken. Yeah, we're definitely going to get that taken care of. But again, it was just one of these things that I felt like it needed to do to honor my dad. And, it turned out it's a legacy piece for me as well, too. So, yeah, it's and I've got some copies sitting over here on the shelf that I picked up because I was like, I want to have some copies for me, and for the longest time, I didn't have any copies. So people would be like, got copies of your book? I'm like, no, don't have any copies. I thought, well, I need to keep some on hand. So yeah, kind of like toilet paper, John. You got to always keep some on hand.
Well, that's what we do with Chad's book. I keep several copies here because anytime we travel to do podcasts or like where you came on and I mailed yours to you, I want to. That's one of the things. That's one of the gifts we give to our guests. I mean, and make sure Chad signs them and get them out. So when I started reading,
I do have I do have a couple of pieces of Let's Talk Fortitude I'm pointing right at the Let's Talk Fortitude memorabilia that's hanging in my office. So I'm looking. It is. I'm a diehard Reds fan, so I have a Reds jersey hanging up, and then I have a shirt that a guy gave me in my church that's too small, but I'm like, it's sentimental. And then I've got that one right there. So it's when you come into my office at an undisclosed location in West Virginia, you will see some Let's Talk Fortitude memorabilia there. So
I appreciate that, Brian.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
And it's, I give it to people. It's just something I do. It's something I want to do. I mean, we don't, so far, like you and I talked about, the expectations of getting paid off YouTube. I mean, even if you have, 15, 20,000 views or whatever, you're not making big bucks. I mean, you got to be hundreds of thousands of views before you're really doing it.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's kind of dive off on that for a minute. I maintain to people that, and I'm in a couple podcasting groups still, and I always hear people talk about monetization. Okay. And I say to people, look, monetization is advertising. And when you take advertising dollars, you're beholden to those sponsors.
Exactly.
So if your messaging is not, if at some point there's a change in leadership at that company, or your podcast all of a sudden doesn't resonate, in air quotes, like it did before, guess what? They're going to take their dollars and go somewhere else. So, and somebody asked me with the book one time, good friend of mine, she's a 10 or 12 time author. She's like, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't her. It was another friend of mine. He said, how many books did you sell? And I said, don't know, don't care. And he's kind of looked at me inquisitively. I said, that's not the purpose of the book.
Right.
The purpose of the book is to be a tribute to my dad. The purpose of the book is that somebody that reads it will get the same principles. And if you read it and you apply the principles, it will make you a better connector. You'll be a stronger, deeper, more powerful connector. I said, but I don't worry about, 50-time New York bestselling author. Big deal. Big deal. I heard something the other day. Somebody was talking about James Patterson, the fiction thriller novelist, right? The writer. And it's like, James Patterson is like a 50-time New York Times bestselling author. And I'm like, okay, great. But he always has to do something to keep that status up. Same thing with a guy like John Gordon. John Gordon in leadership, you always have to create to keep that machine going. And John Gordon was like, I always wanted to be a speaker and author. I'm like, why? You always have to keep creating something. And then you become beholden to constantly create.
Yeah. John Maxwell's another one.
Right. So you go past the point of impact and you go to the point of influence. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Impact over influence every day, all day, 365 days a year. And so for me, if I'm going to do something with content, I'm going to make sure that it's got my very best in it and it's going to be impactful, so that, to your point about YouTube views and stuff like that, look, we find out in the world of podcasting all the time, you can buy some of that stuff. You can buy views, you can buy downloads, you can buy these, these different things. So really, what's it do for you? So with this book, for me, if this is one of one, or if it's one of 10, I'm always going to be proud of this one first, because it was the first. And I know how hard it was to write. I did all the editing myself. Now, I had some help from some friends who would give me some advice, but I did all the editing myself. And John, I'll be honest with you, this book almost didn't happen. I have a dear friend of mine, Jason Romano. He wrote a couple books, Live to Forgive and The Uniform of Leadership. Jason is a former ESPN producer. And Jason and I were talking about book costs one day. I'm like, man, there's no way. And then a friend of mine, Eric Conovalov, said, B, you can do this for a lot less money. Because money is always right. Money is always the thing that either propels us or stops us. And I was like, man, I don't have 10 grand to publish a book and do all this stuff. And man, I did this book relatively inexpensively and cash flowed all of it. And so I'm really proud that I found, with the help of my friends, ways to do this book, editing this book, deciding on the cover. There, John, do you notice the color of the font of People Buy From People?
Yeah, it's green.
It's a certain kind of green, John.
Yeah, it's what is that? It's the Marshall green. Kelly green.
It's Kelly green. That's
exactly
Kelly green. So the reason that is that one of the first sporting events I remember going to with my dad was the last game at the field house in Huntington that Marshall basketball played in. And the funny thing is that, so I'm a 8-year-old kid standing at the field house. They're cutting the nets down, and I'm standing next to a guy named Barry Kincaid, who played at Marshall. He was from La Follette, Tennessee, right across the Tennessee-Kentucky border on 75. And that's the last, my dad and I were at the last game at the field house. If you're from West Virginia and you recognize that, the old Veterans Memorial Fieldhouse was in Huntington. And then so the herd moves into the Marshall Thundering Herd. They move into the Cam Henderson Center the next year. What year was it? 84. So I'm a little bit older. I was about 11 at the time. My dad and I are sitting up in the rafters. Marshall's playing the Citadel. We're sitting up in the rafters, and it's senior night. And it's a guy named Laverne Evans. It's Laverne Evans' last game. And that was the first year of the Rick Huckabee era at Marshall. Fast forward to my senior year of high school, Rick Huckabee was our basketball coach at South Point High School.
Wow.
And so that was really cool. And it was really cool the first time Huck passed away in 2006. My dad passed. It was really cool the first time I got to introduce Huck to my dad. And that's a moment that sticks out to me. But again, the reason that the font is Kelly green is because my first sports memories with some of the first sports memories with my dad were at Marshall games. So it was going to be Kelly Green from the jump, and John, it turned out really pretty, man. It's a really striking cover, and it's a really, the green really
beautiful.
stands out. So yeah, I'm super proud of it.
You did great. You really did. Well, I got to tell you, when I went through and started reading the book, because I'm in sales myself, and I've been in sales for quite some time. I had my own
you've
business
got a
in
deep
Charlotte.
history in sales, so
and I'm all about it. I mean, you're absolutely right. When I went through that, but I got to be honest with you, when I first started reading it, I got through the first chapter, and I'm like, okay, I'm looking for something more on, because I didn't realize it was a total, until I started reading the forward and everything, that it was a tribute to your dad in the way that it actually is. You can say people buy from people, and then say it's a tribute to my dad, and then just kind of go into all your experiences as a sales. But that's not what that is, not what it is. So when I finished up chapter 1, I started thinking, man, this is different. It's not what I expected. Got into chapter 2, and I started thinking, there's not one title for this book, but there's 100 titles for this book, because you did very well with it. It's very catching because me being in sales, I'm like, because I'm the type of person that I believe that customer service gets you so far, but in a recession or a depression, relationships is what's going to get you through.
Yeah.
Because if you go build that relationship with your customer, and then you do provide them a great service, they're going to want you to be there on the other side of whatever's going on. When things get better, they're going to want you to be there. They're not going to have to deal with somebody else, and they'll go above and beyond, and they'll give you what, help you get by until things do perk up. So that's, but and I sent, I made some notes to everybody. I made some notes. I normally don't do this. And I sent Brian some notes on the book, because I need help staying off of rabbit trails, because, brother, I will chase every rabbit in West Virginia, between West Virginia and Florida. I'll chase them.
So I intentionally looked through that, and I haven't looked at it since. You know why? Because I wanted us to have a really deep, organic conversation on this book. You're picking up what I was putting down, so to speak.
Okay.
So
that's awesome.
So let me tell you something. This book started out being a sales book. I got halfway through writing it and understood my dad was not teaching me about sales. He was teaching me about connection.
Right.
And that's why the singular, listen, so people who watch this, if you don't get any line out of the book, you can throw away the other 44,000 words in this book. Hold on to these. People buy connection before they ever make a transaction.
Yep.
If you get that singular piece, you've got it all.
I highlighted that in the book, by the way.
Yeah. And John, I have used that line over and over and over, because here's what happens. There's no amount of sales training that can make you a better connector. Okay. But if you want to be a better connector, there's all kinds of little things that you can do to become a better connector. But no singular piece of sales training will make you a better connector. You've got all this training on closing, and you've got all this training on, getting, in your opinion, do you feel, when I was selling food years ago, I worked for U.S. Foods up in Hurricane. I'll never forget my sales manager at the time, Butch Petrie. He loved this sales training on Steve Brown, and Steve Brown, even 25 years ago, that training was old. I mean, so it's got to be close to 50 years old now. Butch he just wear us out. Butch, and if you're listening, brother, I love you, but that stuff got old real quick. And this guy would be like, well, in your opinion, do you feel? We've been trying for forever and 200 days to manufacture artificial things in sales, when all people really want is an experience that connects them to product or service that benefits them. Here's what I've said about sales. Sales is great people. Sales is connecting great people to a great product or service with great purpose. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
And you do that by being authentic.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't do anything else, if you connect great people, customers, with great products or services with great purpose, you got it.
Yep.
Because passion is I want to say this. I probably shouldn't. We're among friends here. Passion at times is like a fart in a windstorm.
There you go. There you go, brother. We're from West Virginia.
West Virginia terminology there. Because here's the thing. It comes on strong and then it dissipates. That's what passion does sometimes. Purpose is constant. Purpose is constant. It's something that you can depend on. If you've got, it's like the daylight. The daylight, the sun just doesn't rise. All of a sudden it goes from like dark to light, like turn on a light switch. The sun consistently every morning rises the same way. And it sets the same way. God intended for that to happen. And so again, that's consistency. That's purpose. It's not passion. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that people that read this could go, yeah, I get it. I see it. And I didn't write it just for salespeople, John. I wrote it so literally anybody that wanted to be a better connector could pick it up and run with it. Period.
Well, that's why I did a story thing on Facebook, and I put a copy of the book up, and I just put on there, this book is for everyone who wants to connect. It's for everyone. It's not for just the salesman. This is for anybody that's trying to connect and wants to connect with others. And it's amazing. I just got to say, it's an amazing book. And a couple of the big things that I really took out of it that I try to do is, and you talk about finding something in common. And so whenever I go into someone's office, when I'm making a sales call, and if I've never been there before, the first thing I do is I start looking on the walls. I'll look on their screensaver. What's on their screen? If I can see the computer screen, I find something that we have in common. And I've told my younger guys 1,000 times, I said, look, man, if you go into somebody's office and let's say the guy is a big NASCAR fan, but you've never watched a NASCAR race, well, go watch YouTube. It's a wonderful thing. Get up to date on a few things and go find something to talk to them about, but be authentic about it. Don't be fake, but use it as a way to find something in common and to build a relationship. I asked a guy about a dog that was on his screensaver on his computer on his four-wheeler. Yeah. I was there an hour and a half because his dog had just passed away and he wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so, I ended up developing a tremendous relationship with that man because I'm a big dog lover too. I had two of them at the house at the time. And so, but that's just one of the many things. But one of the things in there, and talk about this if you would, is about a personal touch. You talk about that in the book, and just kind of talk to people about when you go in and you want to touch somebody, make sure it's a personal touch.
Well, here's the thing we forget a lot of times in sales and life, anything else. We forget what people do is not who they are. You know, and the thing about it is that there was a relief pitcher years ago. I saw a quote in an old media guide. Relief pitcher for the LA Dodgers named Claude Osteen. And he said, a pat on the back is only 18 inches from a kick in the butt.
Yeah, I highlighted that one too.
Yeah. And so again, what happens is that we're too busy patting people on the back instead of looking them in the eye and go, here's what I value about you. Here's what you do really well Or from a customer perspective, hey, you know what? Here's what I value about our relationship. I value the fact that you're always upfront with me. One guy comes to mind really quickly for me, and that's a friend of mine named John Brown. John runs a company in Charlotte called Campbell Brown. They're in the heavy truck parts industry.
I know that company.
John Brown is a dear friend of mine. John Brown has run Campbell Brown forever.
Yep.
And John Brown is a dear friend. What I value most about JB is the way that he warmly brings you. I could be sitting 6 feet away from JB having a conversation with me, because I've sat in his office so many times. I could be across the desk from him, and it's like I'm sitting right next to him. He has a way of pulling people in with his presence. And it doesn't matter how long it's been since we've talked, it's the same thing. We're right back in that same mode. That's the personal touch that you add to people. That Dale Carnegie said this, John: the sweetest sound to a person's ears is the sound of their own name. And again, when you use somebody's name in conversation, it's a connecting point between you and them. It takes the relationship from customer salesperson to equals, friend to friend. Try this sometime. If you're a salesperson out there listening to us, try this sometime. Instead of being, everybody says, well, you should put yourself in the customer's shoes. You got to put yourself in no. There's no way you can put yourself in the customer's shoes. Here's what you do. It's as if you're walking alongside the customer. Put your arm around that customer. When you put your arm around that customer, you see what they see in that transaction. You can see the potential pitfalls, because if they've got any objections, if I'm facing you, John, if you and I are sitting across the table from each other and I'm facing you, I can't see what's behind me that you see that's an objection. If I'm sitting next to you, then I go, okay, John, I see that. Let's work on that. I see that. I get your perspective here. Okay, let's work on that together. Let me see if I can clear that roadblock. But so many times, I've heard it so much, I want to puke. Well, you have to pull that customer in. No, quit that. You go stand in the same perspective spot that your customer is standing in, so you can see what they see. And when you do that, it'll connect you in a way that you didn't think possible. John, here's the thing. Forgive me for going off here.
No, you're good, brother. I'm here for you.
So much sales training that's crap. When it really, and I've got a lot of friends that are in the sales training world. I mean, no disrespect. But if you can't connect, you can't sell.
You're absolutely right.
I don't care how good your training is.
Yep.
And I've told them, if you can't connect, you can't sell. Because everybody in America, every person on the planet is connection driven. Think about the brands people are loyal to. You use StreamYard for a platform. I used Zoom. I connected with Zoom. For me, it was easy. I didn't, StreamYard didn't connect with me. Not to say it's bad, but it just didn't connect with me.
Right.
I wasn't a buyer. And so, when you look at those things, what connects to that person? I can't stand, everybody's talking about how bad the Yankees are right now. Can't stand the Yankees. I care less. Reds are playing Anaheim tonight. They're playing in Anaheim, playing the Angels. I care about that. That's what I'm connected to. That's what I'm connected to. And so again, if you want to bring me along, you got to find out what connects with me. You want to sell to me, you got to find out what connects with me.
So my dad, I was 10 years old. Took me and my stepmother and my sister to a 5-game series with the Houston Astros there at Three Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was there, George Foster put one in the upper deck. I'm telling you, man, it's 1,000 wonders that ball didn't leave the stadium. That dude could hit a ball like I've never seen. But that's when the big red machine was rolling, and they
that
swept
used to
that
be a
series.
big thing to hit the ball at Riverfront, to hit the ball in the red seats. That
was
red seat home run. Yeah, Davey Concepcion killed his swing for a year and a half because he hit a ball in the red seats, and then every time up he tried to put another one in the red seats. Yeah,
well, those boys were fun to watch back then, man. They were fun to watch.
John, you got to figure out what connects to people.
Yeah.
You know, what is your customer looking for in this process? You know, sometimes price isn't the dominant buying motive for a customer. That doesn't connect with them. You know, I could listen. I got an example right here. Let me show you something. Absolutely my favorite chips in the world. Can't really see them. It's a brand called Julio's. They're out of Texas. My favorite tortilla chips in the world. Our Walmart just started carrying Julio's tortilla chips. So whoever made that call for the Barbersville Walmart to start carrying Julio's, outstanding. Outstanding. I love it. The best tasting tortilla chip I've ever had. I don't want another type of tortilla chip. And I used to buy Tostitos with lime, and now I buy these things almost by the case, John. I love them. They've connected with me. And so, you know, again, I don't care that they're almost $5 a bag. What do I care? I want them. They're the best tasting chip. And again, by the way, Julio's, if you want to sponsor the Let's Talk Fortitude podcast, since we've given you a free plug here, you need to see my man John Garrett and get hooked up there. So maybe you can send him some free product or something like that. But again, John, I don't care how much it costs because it's good.
Right. Exactly.
What do I care? You know. So again, we got to get out of this habit of, oh, it's cheap, so that's. So I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I can buy 2 bags. There's a Kroger tortilla chip. I can buy 2 bags for what I spend for that one. I'll buy that bag every time.
Yeah. And, people will pay for quality. I mean, it's just like, case in point, you go build a relationship, you connect, you build a relationship, you do what you say you're going to do. You might be a little bit more expensive than the other people, but if they like you and they like what you deliver and they like the service and they like your product, they'll pay the extra for it. 100%. You get what you pay for. 100%. Do they want it? Do they want the product dropped, or do they want somebody to come in and put it away for them?
Yeah, 100%.
What are you willing to pay for?
Well, and again, too, we have decided that things are commoditized. Quit commoditizing what you do. You can't commoditize you.
Right.
If you commoditize you, you have taken your superpower away. That's my air conditioning that you hear there. That's
no, you're good. I just want to make sure it wasn't something here. No, it's good.
No, so in my office here in my studio, I have a window air conditioning unit that's several years old. And I thought I had put it on power saver to keep the room cool, but it decided it was the right temperature to kick on. So,
Brian, it's fine, brother, and nobody gonna pay any attention to it. So, hey, listen, let me ask you a question. One of the things that intrigued me about your book was when your dad gave you the phone call to come that he needed you. Let's talk about that one.
Oh man, that's a pretty powerful moment. So I was
and what that meant to you and what that did for your all's relationship.
John, here's the thing. Mine and my dad's relationship was always good. It wasn't, and I had a good relationship with my parents. It wasn't a turning point moment, but it was the first time in my life where my dad needed me.
Right. That's what I was
So
getting.
that was, so that was, I'm sitting in my living room. I've worked a job that I worked evenings, and I'm sitting there, and my dad called me, and it kind of took me aback, and he said, "I need some help." He said, my youngest sister at the time was having some issues. My dad was trying to pastor a church, work a full-time job, try to be all things to all people. And his boss told him, he said, "You got two problems, Jerry." He said, "You need somebody that is great with people and doesn't mind traveling." And my dad's words to me that he said to his boss were, "I got the guy." And my dad's boss, Chris, said, "Who?" And my dad said, "My Brian." And it's like, okay, because John, here's the thing. It is an interesting thing. It's a very interesting thing when you have adult kids, and we're always trying with our parents from the time we're little kids all the way to adulthood. We move out of the house. We're trying to establish our independence. Man, at the time I was 40 years, I was 39 years old. I had an 11-year-old son, and you're calling me your Brian. But in that moment, oh my goodness, it crushed me, man. And it was like, okay. And so we go to my dad and mom's house my dad said, "I want you and Tanya to come over." Because my dad knew if she wasn't on board, it wasn't going to happen. And so he's like, "I want you and Tanya and Bryce to come over. We'll get a bite to eat." And we were sitting around the kitchen table at my mom and dad's house. My dad looked at my wife, Tanya, and he goes, "I'm not going to let this be an issue. I'm not going to let this affect our relationship. I'm going to protect him in this situation." He had to get my wife's buy-in because my wife was skeptical, because I had thought about the emotional part, John, and I was like, oh man, the emotional part of this was pretty heavy. But once my wife kind of saw, okay, this is an opportunity, and then, to realize that we're having this conversation in December, and none of us knew that the next December he'd be gone. So, I mean, it was just one of those situations. When I turned my notice in at the company I was working at, I told the guy that was my boss, and he and I are still great friends to this day, Brian Willett. I said, "Brian, it's about family and money," because they were going to give me a bump in salary. I said, "Brian, it's about family and money." And John, to this day, it's still the best job I've ever had, and nothing will top it. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, it's the best job I've ever had. And why? Because for 3 months, 4 days a week, I rode with my dad. My dad and I would get on the road when I was in training. My dad and I would get on the road. He'd pick me up, and from Monday to Thursday, we'd be gone and get back home sometime Wednesday or Thursday. And we go have dinner together, stay in the same hotel, grab breakfast. And we talked about everything. And so, for those 3 months, it's the best job I ever had. Because those, the only dumb thing I didn't do, John, was hit record on my iPhone, so that I could have recorded some of those conversations. So, but that's who I had no idea my dad was going to be gone. So,
So my dad worked in a coal mine. There was times whenever I was growing up, I'd go a couple of weeks and never see Dad because he left at 4, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I was in the bed when he left, and then he would come home and then whenever he would go to bed early at night so he could get up early in the morning, I would come in after from playing or whatever, be out running around. So if I didn't see him on Sunday, because he works 6 days a week, well, once he finally got injured in the mine and they moved, got closer to us and would come and stay with us there in Charlotte. And when I first started my business, he would come when I would go in and have a complete house to repaint. Dad would come in and help me take the doors down, take the knobs off, help me stain fences when he, when he had his health. And even to this day, I'll call him when I had my business. I'd call him 2 or 3 times a day. And my wife would say, "What do you talk to him about 2 or 3 times a day?" I said, "Nothing. I didn't have a dad for 36 years. I've got a dad now, and I'm gonna take advantage, not make up for anything, but I'm gonna take advantage of every minute that I have, whether it's in person or on the phone, because there's going to come a day I'm not going to have him."
That's smart. That's real smart. And again, it is. It's one of those things where if you knew then what you know now,
Right.
you would do things different. I'll share a story with you. A cool story. Talk about the power of connection. So we had a customer in Akron, Ohio. It was a father-son like my dad and I. So Dan was a guy named Dan was the father, his son Eric, and they worked in the same business for an auto electrical rebuilder. And so I meet Eric for the first time in November, and we're clicking. We are clicking. I had gotten my MBA in 2011. So did Eric. And so we were connecting on that. And before I went in there, my dad goes, "Man, I love Dan, but I can't stand Eric." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And so the whole time I'm in there talking to Eric, 30, 35, 40 minutes, my phone keeps ringing. I just kidding. I hit ignore. It's like ignore. It's my dad. I'm like, ignore. He goes, "What in the world have you been talking to Eric for?" I said, "I've been talking to Eric." "What could you possibly been talking to Eric for the last 40 minutes, hour?" And I said, "Dad, we connected. He's got an MBA. I've got an MBA." I said, "You always talk about connection, and we connected." So the day before my dad dies, John. It's the last day on earth my dad spent it. My mom traveled with my dad the last 6 months because my dad had a pacemaker put in May of 2012. And so she, we worked for a family company. So she traveled with him. Company was going to foot the bill for the hotel and pay for my dad's expenses. And my dad just paid for my mom's out of pocket. And so he's in this same account. He walks in and Eric's just going, "Jerry, man, I love Brian. Love what you guys are doing. Just love it." He's just going on and on about me. And they're just like, "We're going to do more business with you guys. You align with us, father, son. And so I get out to the car. My dad calls me and he's like, "I just had a love fest about you. I'm sick to my stomach." He's just giving me a hard time. My mom told me a couple of days later, she said, "He was so proud of you, but you couldn't see it." He's like, and so I feel like in ways, John, that was a gift from the Lord, not only to my dad, but to me, that the last day that my dad lived, because I always said I wanted my dad to see up close and personal how good I was. I had a 17-year sales career before then. I had won awards and things like that. And I wanted my dad to see how good I was. And so that I feel like that was a gift from the Lord to just say, "Okay, here you go. Your dad's going to see it up close and personal." So, that is something that I will take with me to my grave.
So in your book, you talked about, was it your uncle that noticed you had perfect harmony?
Yeah.
And,
so I have
and how you talked about that in your book.
Yeah. So I have a blind uncle named Larry Castro. Larry lives out in Portland, Oregon. So he married my aunt, Sue. That's a cool story. They met and got married in the 70s. Larry lived in San Francisco. My Aunt Sue lived back here in West Virginia. They wrote to each other. They'd never seen each other until a week before they got married.
Gosh.
We're married 40 years. Yeah, so Larry's almost 88 years old. He lives with his daughter Loretta out in Portland, Oregon. And so I'm 15 years old. And we're sitting around listening on a Sunday afternoon. We're sitting at my house. And we're listening to stuff, and I just told my uncle, I said, "It's an A flat." Or I think I told my dad, I said, "It's an A flat." And my uncle was like, "What did you just say?" Like, "Yeah, it's an A flat." He looked at my dad and he goes, "That kid's got a gift. He's got perfect pitch." And so I didn't think anything about it. It's like, yeah, and so but that was a really cool moment, and I've used that gift a bunch. In fact, just recently, my niece, my 15-year-old niece, is learning to play the violin. I keep arguing with her, John. It's a fiddle. Call that thing what it is. It's a fiddle. She's learning to play the violin, though, and she told me one day, she said, "Aunt Tanya tells me you have perfect pitch." I'm like, "Yeah, you want to try it out?" She goes, "Yeah, I think I do." It's like, all right, game on. So she just hits notes on the string. I tell her what it is. She just looks up at me like, "This ain't fair." I'm like, "I know it's not fair."
But you know what? I'm going to take this a step further.
Okay.
With you having that gift,
Mm-hmm.
does that, because music and voice pitch, voice inflection, that's one of the reasons why I hate text messaging and email, because you have no facial
Right.
recognition. You have you can't hear the influx of a voice. When you meet people, does that gift of pitch you have, does that help you with when people are speaking to you, of reading their mood, or does that have anything to do with that? Can you tell?
No, most people talk to me, they say one of two things. Either they say, "I recognize that voice," or "You've got a radio voice."
That's what my wife said. She said, "Man, he's got a voice for TV, radio, announcing, whatever." So my wife said,
I will tell you this. I will tell you this. Okay. So I, just like anything else, John, I had to work on my voice. Okay. If I'm doing a PA event, or if I'm doing the Roten show or something like that, I know how to turn it on a little bit. Okay. So let me give you an example. So if I really wanted to turn it on like that and just change the pitch of my voice and just change it a little bit like that and project it, I can sound totally different. Hear the difference?
Yep.
But see, here's the thing. We have a lot of people in our society that want to turn it on for the camera. Right? We got people that filter, get these Instagram filters, we got this and that. And so again, what I want to come through is the authenticity of my voice. Because if I want to sound like an FM DJ, I can sound like an FM DJ.
Yep.
I know how to do it. But I hope it comes out of me naturally. And there's a lesson there. When you connect with people, let it come naturally. Let it come out naturally.
So what you just said takes me to another point that I wanted to talk about. Naturally can also be used, or can be said by uniqueness. And you say in your book, seek unicorns and unique creatures.
Yep. Because unicorns are hard to find. I mean, unicorns are, the Bible refers to the unicorn in the book of Psalms. And so what do we think about with a unicorn? We think about a mythical creature, a happy place, stuff like that. And so again, when I talk about seeking unicorns, my wife has told me for a lot of years. I was having lunch with my pastor, Pastor Aaron Fairburn at Bible Apostolic Church, And we were talking about it. My wife has told me for years, she's like, you have an eclectic group of friends. It's because I seek people that are very unique and unusual people. I don't want to be friends. Listen, if you're the most popular guy in the world, I'm probably not going to be friends with you.
Well, we're headed in the right direction because.
Well, because here's the thing, John. People that are that popular, they know that they're that popular, and it's hurdles to get close to them.
Yeah.
What with me, I want to be a what you see is what you get. You know, I want to be humble and thankful and things like that. And so, you know, the group of friends that I have, it is very eclectic because I've always sought unicorns. I don't want people that are just like me. I don't want to connect with people that are just like me, nor do I want to connect with those people that are just like, oh, aren't they the best? They're just awesome. And they're like, yeah, they're fake. They're phony.
Yeah.
They are the way they are because they have something within them that has a need to be the center of attention. I don't want to be friends with people that are center of attention. You know, they're people that act that way. They know it, and it's like, man, alive, no. And so that's why I say seek unicorns. Seek people that are unusual. Seek people that are interesting. You know, and
I tell you what,
yeah,
you get. I think in 10 years I hired 50, 51, 52 people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's amazing. And being in the military for 10 years, I come out and I said, you know, just when I thought I had seen it all, then something new come along.
Yep.
And I don't want to be around people just like me. I mean, I want, you know, you don't want,
exactly.
You know, I want something different. I want somebody that's, when I say something, they're going to say, hang on a minute here, bro. Let's talk about this because something ain't right here.
Right.
You know, they're not just going to say, oh, I think that's a good idea. That's a great idea. Let's do that. And then the next thing you know, I'm driving off a cliff somewhere, you know. I just so appreciate great conversation to let people know that it's okay to be unique. It's okay to be yourself. And when you go to sell, if you try to be anything else other than yourself, people are going to pick up on it. I mean, if you're fake, they're going to know you're fake. If you're not authentic, if you're not really and truly interested in them and what they are doing, listen, they're going to pick up on that. They're going to know you're a phony. Don't try to fool them. And I tell people too that come into work to sell, I said, look, I can teach you the computer. I can teach you how to do Excel. I can teach you how to do Word. I can teach you the POS system, the point of sale system. What I can't teach you is, and I'm just a firm believer. I believe sales and connecting with people is a God-given. It's a gift.
Yeah, and
I really do. I believe it's a gift.
I had to go back and read it in just real quick there, because I wrote about it in the last chapter, and the subheading is trick no one, amaze everyone. And so what happens is you've got people that feel like they have to fool everybody. They have to fool everybody so that everybody will not see who they really are. You know, right? It's the guy that, you know, look over here, not over here, right? I wrote about it. It's funny. Years ago, David Copperfield, the magician, was coming to Charleston. And he was playing the Clay Center, and I was working for a food broker at the time, and I was riding with my distributor sales rep. We go into the Clay Center to call on a chef, and he tells my rep, he goes, hey, Friday morning, I need that truck in here as early as you get it in here. He said, we got Copperfield coming. He said his people are going to take. He said they're rolling in here between 9 and 11, and once they get the loading dock, our contract says no, nobody else. They get full control of the back of the property. And what they were doing, John, is the Clay Center has seats like this, so it goes around kind of in an arc type shape. Everything on the side they curtained off because Copperfield's people wanted a straight ahead view. So you can't bring anything into the back loading dock, and you can't sell anything with a side view. So what's that tell you? He doesn't want you to know how the tricks are done.
Yeah, he doesn't want you to be able to see the illusion side.
Right, exactly. That's the way some people are. They're so guarded in their presentation of who they want you to think they are that they're fooling people. Here's the thing. Real amazement is done close up.
Yep.
If you watch somebody, we were out in Las Vegas several years ago, and there's guys that'll stand and they'll do these close-up card tricks, and you're like, how in the world did they do that? I'm standing literally, I am 3 feet away from you. I don't know how you did that. Those are the kind of interactions you want with people, to where they leave and they get, John, here's the thing that I'll say to piggyback off that. When I meet people for the first time, here's what I want them to say. Man, I thought Sexton was a good guy. He's an even better guy in person.
That's right. That's right.
And so, again, when we finally meet up, man, I want you to be able to say, man, I've been texting with Brian and talking to Brian and stuff like that. Man, I thought Brian was a good guy. He's an even better guy in person. That's
right.
That's when you get it. That's when you're connecting at a level that is other person focused. Let me put the spotlight on you, not me. Let me build you up. And that's how you really want to connect with people, you lift them and you lower yourself.
That's right.
It's lifting and lowering. Lift up somebody else, lower yourself. That's the secret of it. You really want to connect, it's lift and lower. Lift others, lower yourself.
That's just like whenever I come across your podcast, I'm like, man, I'd like to get Brian on. So I go and I'm looking up Brian Sexton, Intentional Encourager podcast. So I started listening to your podcasts, and the intentional side of your podcast is why, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not saying it's just to blow smoke, but I can't believe it hasn't taken off more than it has. And you're like me. I mean, I do it I have my reasons for doing it. It's more of a ministry than it is anything else. And it's a hobby for me to tell other stories. But what I'm trying to say is I did some homework on you before I brought you on. And so that I can, and so I consider, and people go back and look at the first podcast we done, I'm actually asking you about things that were said in your podcasts. And you knew that, hey, John's done his homework. John knows that, he's went and listened. He's not just listening for 5 minutes and then trying to come on here. I've listened to hours of your podcasts, and they're awesome.
You poor guy.
No, listen, I'm telling you right now, brother, I'm going to blow you up because listen, well, they're really, really good.
So here's the thing. So you said you wondered why I hadn't taken off yet. Okay. I had this philosophy. I've always said about anything that I've done, the Lord will take it if it's His will. He will take it places I could never take it.
That's right.
He'll do things I can't do. And so I've always said that. And I've always been one that's been more interested in conversations than interviews.
Right.
Here's another takeaway. And I've said this to podcasters before. said, don't forget this. People love being a part of conversations. They don't want to witness interrogations.
That's right.
And so I've intentionally, John, taken conversations in different directions because I wanted to keep them organic, and I wanted to keep them away from an interview into a conversation, because I always felt like with the Intentional Encourager podcast that I had a little invisible guy on my right shoulder tapping me on the shoulder and saying, ask this person this. Ask them this. And so that's what I want to do in conversations like this, is just bring out some different and go in some different areas. Because here's the thing. I don't want to replicate a conversation. I want it to be so unique. It's like, I'll tell you where I learned it. I'll tell you, I don't know if I shared this with you. I'll tell you where I learned it. So, 2016, I reached out to Al Robertson. I said, Al, any chance I can get your dad on the Roten Show? Because I thought, man, that'd be a good get. He said, Sexton, let me see what I can do. I said, all right, bud. He comes back to me. He said, yeah. He said, we can line it up. I said, man, oh man. He said, can you record something? I said, yeah. You tell me when. I'll line it up. I'll make it work. And so I got the producer at the time to come in there. And he came in like on his off time. He's like, yeah, this is really cool. This is big. This is a big deal. We sat down with Phil. I had 13 questions written out to ask Phil. I asked him 4. We recorded an hour. That taught me right there the power of an organic conversation. It was the most amazing. And it changed when I launched the Intentional Encourager podcast. It changed the way I did that podcast. And it's changed every conversation I've had since then. Because Phil would say something like, man, let's go a little deeper there. Or I'd go in a direction and Phil would bring me, he'd come this way. I'm like, man, that's good. Let's go there. You know, the one thing, John, that I always tried to do in every podcast episode, I wanted my guest to go, man, that's a good question. And had nobody asked me that before. And so again, when you're an authentic connector, you're looking for those things in those conversations to connect with people that get their minds just go bing, 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 bing,
right.
Bing, 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 like a pinball machine, right? And so again, that's what creates that great connection, is that you're just pinging in their mind like, man, this is all right. This is good. This is what you want. And folks, I'm going to tell you something. There are so many things that we lack in connection. You know, I am way more connected to my wife now than I was the day we married.
Oh, absolutely.
Way more.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, same here.
Way more connected.
Yeah.
I mean, she actually really likes me now. I mean, she liked me enough to marry me, but she really likes me now. But I had to change. You know, if I would show you a wedding picture, my wife is beautiful in her wedding dress. I got these horn rim glasses on. I got this goatee. My face is about this wide. Now I look at, I'm like, man, I'm actually halfway decent looking now. It's like, okay, well, I'm the guy my wife should have married 27 years ago. I kind of look like that now. But you know, but the thing of it is, and I've said this, I told her, I said, Tanya, wouldn't you love to go knock on the door of Tanya and Brian in 1996? Wouldn't you love to go knock on their door? Well, let's say January 1997, because we'd been married a few months. I'd love to go knock. I'd love to time travel back and go knock on that door.
Man, I don't know. I'd be afraid what I find.
Oh man, you know what I would do? I'd knock on that door and I'd kind of let myself in. I'd say, sit down. We got stuff to talk about. My 24-year-old me, I'd be like, listen here, Hoss, get you some popcorn. We're going to be here a minute.
Yeah, I got a story to tell you. Oh my goodness.
So
my conversation, Brian, what I like to do with you, I mean, you're the type of person that when we get on here, that our conversation, I want it to be like either you've come to visit me and I gave you a glass of sweet tea and we're sitting in rocking chairs on the porch, or I'm at your house and we're just having a conversation.
Because the sugar would mess me up on the sweet tea. Coke
Zero, and I'll do a sweet tea.
Well, I drink hot tea, but listen, John, I have named my tea West Virginia Hooch.
I get you. I'm with you. That sounds good.
So my mix has got either Lipton hot tea or Earl Grey or something I've procured for free from a hotel that I stayed in. You know, they put the tea out for a reason. They want you to take it. And I'm like,
that's right. That's right.
I take them up on it. Yeah. So I get a couple tea bags, some Folgers instant coffee, a little scoop of Folgers instant coffee, some honey, some good local honey, and about 6 stevia packets that my wife orders me off Amazon. And that's my blend.
Do you remember how old were you and when was the first time you actually preached? Or can you remember?
Yeah. My first, was when my dad was alive. I was 38 or 39 because I told my dad I felt like the Lord had given me something for his church. And he's like, well, you should come and preach it. So the first message I preached, my dad heard me preach. I was 38 or 39. I think it was 2000, sometime in 2011. It's the first time I preached.
So when you put that message out, that you were speaking, the other day, by the way, I'm not going to tell you here because I don't want to rob my blessing. Because I do things in secret, and there's certain things I say in secret. Because it's meant for you. It ain't meant for nobody else.
There you go.
But the things that you talk about in the book with your family, with your kids, decisions you made about not going on the road so that you could be there at Bryce's ball games, that you weren't going, that you took a pay cut and you made that decision. Those are questions or decisions that we all have that we all make through life. I mean, I had to make that decision in Charlotte with the company that I'm at now because I had hit a stress point in my life and I had gotten so angry inside and I knew I had to change. So I took a step back. Yeah. It was tough, but I took a step back. So regardless of what it is, I mean, you have to know your limits.
It would have been something my dad did. It would have been something my dad did. My dad, if he had been alive, he would have said this. He would have told me, you need to do this. Because my junior year of high school, my dad traveled quite a bit. My dad missed my honor society induction. He missed 2 or 3. I'd hold it against him. I mean, my dad had to put food on the table. And so, but I knew that about myself, that it was more important to me to be a present dad than an absent provider. If that makes sense.
Right.
And so I knew that was what my dad. Listen, John, I'll say this, and kind of put a bow on this thing, and we can do another episode of this if you want to, but for the longest time after my dad died, I was incredibly intentional about carrying on his legacy, to the point it was almost obsessive, because I didn't want my dad's memory to die. And a dear friend of mine, dear friend of my family, a friend of my dad's, in fact, the reason he's a Christian is because of my dad. I was a kid, and Mike's wife was coming to our church, and Mike was a softball player down in Ashland, Kentucky, and Mike wanted to come play softball. Man, he was a competitive softball player. And my dad told him, they played softball, ate, stuff like that. And, my dad told him, he looked at him, he said, all right, Mike. He said, you've eaten our food. You've played softball with us. I expect to see you at church. Least you could do is come to church. And Mike said, nobody was going to challenge me that way. I was going to be, yeah, I'll come to church. Sure. And God got a hold of his heart. And God saved him. Filled him with his spirit. And Mike has been living for God for 40 years. And Mike told me one time, he said, I got a word from the Lord for you. I saw Mike at a funeral. He said, Brian, it's time for you to be your own man. You have done a good job of honoring your dad's memory and his legacy. Well done. He said, but son, it's time for you to be your own man. And John, that impacted me. It changed me. It rocked me. Because all this time I was trying to keep my dad alive, not realizing my dad's legacy. Tom Ziegler and I talked about this because I asked Tom when I was down there at the Ziegler Library, did you ever feel pressure to carry on your dad's legacy? And he said, Brian, my dad's legacy was cemented long before he passed. He said, now I just got to keep it alive. I just got to move it forward.
Right.
And so people buy from people is that for me, it's moving it forward. It's keeping that alive. It's a book that my grandkids will be able to learn about their great grandfather. My nieces and nephews can see pictures of their pap. It's a book that keeps his memory alive. The legacy's already been cemented.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So the next time you come back, I'd like to do the episode that we've talked about we were going to do the first time we didn't get to, but hey, like you said, we're having conversation. It's not scripted.
Yeah, I love it.
But we'll talk about influence and impact because that's what I talked to Pastor Jeff Garrett about.
Yeah.
Pastor Dr. Jeff Garrett. I mean, he gets mad. He doesn't like it when I call him that. I'm like, look, man, if you got your doctorate, I'm going to call you what you deserve.
I don't have a doctorate. I've got a master's degree. I don't have a doctorate. I'm the Howard Wolowitz of many groups. If you watch The Big Bang Theory, around all these guys that were, Sheldon was a doctor and Leonard was a doctor and Raj was a doctor. Howard just had his master's from MIT. So I'm the Wolowitz of the group. I just have my master's degree.
Well, I've got my doctorate, but it came from the School of Hard Knocks.
Well,
the degree that hurts.
There you go, man.
So
there you go. But
hey, John, hang on.
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead, Brian.
I just want to say thank you for everything, your kindness, your kind words. If folks want to get the book, you can go to Amazon and get it. You can get it. It's People Buy from People, Brian Sexton. If you want a copy, me to sign it, reach out to me and I'll work out a deal with you where you can get a signed copy from me. I have some signed copies, and instead of giving Amazon your money, you can just send it here and I'll sign it and things like that. Just, but again, they can reach out to me. Best way to reach out to me is just send me an email at intentionalencouragerpodcast@gmail.com. And
awesome.
I check that email. If you want a copy of the book, you want to get a copy of the book, buy it from me. I'll sign it and ship it to you. Again, you can reach out to me, intentionalencouragerpodcast@gmail.com.
Awesome. And we are definitely going to get you back. As long as you agree to come back, we're going to have you back because I love it, man. I mean, these rocking chair porch conversations is where I want to be. And this is awesome. Now, look, whenever I whenever I thank you for the kind words. I mean, I really do appreciate that. I'm not one that receives stuff like that real well, but I'm trying to do better and take and receive people's blessings and kind words. So hang around after I take us out of here and stop this, and because I got a little something I want to tell you and ask you, because I want to get your pastor's name before you get out of here today.
Good.
But anyway, hey, listen, everybody, we are so thankful that you've joined us, and we hope that you'll catch us in the next one. If you would, please go to Forerunner Productions, forerunnerproductions.com. You can go to forerunnerproductions.locals.com if you want to support Chad and the production company. And but you can catch us there on all podcast platforms. Please hit the like and subscribe. It helps us out with the algorithms. Again, Brian, thanks again, and hang on, brother. I'll see you on the other side.